Alright boys, welcome to BBL semifinals. Today we are taking on Shuckle King, and you can check him out in the top right hand corner. If you missed our round 1 battle, be sure to check that one out as well. We ended up playing Obo. I think we played fantastic, one of the best games we've played all generation. Raging Bolt was extremely scary, but thankfully Zooch made him bring a speed boosting in the Sun Raging Bolt, so we were able to pack him up pretty easily. We're in round 2 now, semifinals, I guess, and I do know who our opponent would be if we are to make finals. I'm not going to spoil that, obviously, but the other side of the bracket at this point is OGalbina and Viz, so we get to play one of those. So honestly, this top 4 are 4 of the best players on Wi-Fi. This is really some of the best battles I think that you guys are going to see on Wi-Fi. If everybody puts forth as much effort as they can to possibly win, which I think they will, we've got some really good games coming up, and I am obscenely confident, irrationally confident, that I'm going to beat Shuckle and clock my ticket to the finals tonight. Before we get into that though, let's go ahead and talk about who Shuckle is. Shuckle is somebody who I have known quite literally since I started Draft League, my first or second ever Draft League. It was mostly just people from my high school. We made like a Skype group. There were 1 or 2 online friends, and they somehow had a connection to Shuckle King, who at the time was still Shuckle King, a DPL player. And all of these people who were playing for their first or second ever Showdown League, Pokemon League in general, towards the beginning of Gen 7, we were just like, sure, you can come on in Shuckle King, but we knew nothing about, and obviously he was much better than all of us. The only thing that I vividly remember from that season is he had Shaman Sky, Zygarde, Mega Scizor, and we all thought his team was bad because he had a lot of 4x weaknesses, and he ended up winning. I'm almost positive. So I've talked about it before, but I might make a video on that one day. It was a really funny league. But all that's to say that I've known Shuckle King for a very long time, and he's a good player and a good friend of mine, so I'm looking forward to this game quite a bit. In fact, he stayed the night at my house not too long ago in October for the Louisville Regional. Sonny, throw his picture up on screen. We had a good time. We played some code names, man, and little did I know he was going to be our semifinals opponent. I try to do this thing where I get into people that I'm close with's heads if we play. Like at Obo, I talked all week about how good of a matchup we had. This time I wasn't gonna go as intense because Shuckle's a nice guy, so I didn't want to like hurt his feelings or anything like that. So I just wanted to try to get into his head a little bit. I shot him a message yesterday that was just simply, "Good luck, pal, you're really gonna need it tomorrow," or something along those lines, and he responded with, "Thanks, man, should be a fun match, or should be a good one." So Shuckle's too nice to get into his head, so we failed on that front. But again, I am irrationally confident in this matchup, in the build that we have, and shout out to Wagon and Clyde for helping me polish this build. And funny story, I think I said it, I've recorded this a few times, I think I said it in this one, I put not as much time into this build, but as much effort as into the Obo build. And what I mean by that is, in the Obo build, I built 6 or 7 different teams until I was satisfied with what I had. With this, I built like a 5 or 10 minute team against Wagon for our first mock because I was running behind. I just wanted to throw something together, kind of see what stuck, what didn't stick out of that mock, just kind of like all of my first ideas, and I won pretty handedly. And we both didn't play great, so we did it again, and we did like up to, I think me, him, and Clyde did up to 4 mocks, 3 or 4 mocks, and I was very satisfied with how they were going, and there were very minimal changes overall to the build. But that's enough yapping. All that's to say that this is the least, I think, the least changes we've had all season on a build. I think there was one other week that was very similar to this that was in competition with it. But regardless, most of what I have is my first draft, and I'm very confident that it can do well. So Shuckle's team should be on screen right now. Should be Zacian, it should be Iron Treads, Terra Water, Ogerpon Teal, Ogerpon Wellspring, excuse me. We have Latios, Darkrai, Deoxys Defense, which he stole from us and made us take Azel for the remainder of the season, and he shall not be forgiven for that one. Pecharunt, Delphox, and Terra Quilladin. So the first thing that you guys see whenever you see this matchup, how do I do this? I always ask myself, how do I do this? Do I talk about his Pokemon first or my Pokemon first? I think ours. We're going to stick with that. If you look at this matchup, the first thing that you'll notice is we finally play an Uber that does not get Stone Edge. Zacian does not get Stone Edge. It does get Wild Charge though, so immediately Ho-Oh becomes infinitely better. Yes, we do play Ogerpon Wellspring, but Ho-Oh has the capability to wall both Latios and Darkrai depending on the sets and really invalidate his special breakers in general. So Ho-Oh does have some usability here. It also, because of the fact that Zacian does not get the Stone Edge, it has the capability to wall quote-unquote Zacian depending on if he's Lum, if he's Fizz Def, like whatever the case may be over there, Sword Stance. So Ho-Oh has a lot of defensive utility here and a lot of ways that we can use it defensively to beat a lot of his threats that would scare us otherwise. So I actually really do like Ho-Oh's matchup here. Next up, Kyurem Black. Kyurem Black's a little weird, man, because he doesn't have an ice resist. He has Delphox, which isn't great into us in general. I'll talk about that more in a minute, but he doesn't have a great ice resist, so it's going to be really interesting on how we can play off of that. Kyurem is also really cool because if we get a DD off, it really is hard for him to revenge us. He needs to be Scarf Lottie, Darkrai, Trailblaze Ogre, or Scarf Zacian, or Mirror Herb Zacian is definitely another way to go about that. Keeping rocks off the field for both Ho-Oh and Kyurem Black is also very, very tough, and Kyurem Black is also one of our only resists on the team to Ogerpon Wellspring. So Kyurem, honestly, it looks like it does great because of the lack of ice resist. Its speed tier makes it not do fantastic here. We kind of want to be DD, but it's hard to be DD because of the potential that he has to revenge us. All of that is to say, Kyurem Black does fine here. So now we get into the Pokemon that I really delve deep into how they do, and I can say a few more words about, because I know the Kyurem and Ho-Oh, I didn't dive super deep. It's pretty surface level as far as those Pokemon go. And I can talk more about them when we actually reveal what sets we have for them. But for Gholdengo, Gholdengo's a lot better in this matchup. Gholdengo might be one of the better Pokemon in this matchup because dual stabs in general is unresisted on our opponent's team. His best resist is going to be like an AAV Iron Treads to switch into that, or to revenge us offensively by sacking something and then going into something. Otherwise, he has weird pivots. He has to decide, does he want to go into Iron Treads and potentially get 2-hit KO'd if he has any chip on him to Shadow Ball? Or does he want to go Darkrai and risk me clicking a Make It Rain and taking a million there? If he has the Ogerpon Terra off, it becomes a little bit easier, but still it doesn't enjoy taking 3 Shadow Balls. And also we get access to Thunderbolt, which is definitely a real possible bring in this matchup. Scarf looks great here, Specs looks great here, Sub Nasty looks good here. There's a lot of different options for Gholdengo, and in my opinion is one of, if not the best Pokemon on our side of the field. It also helps with the Latios, and it forces the Zacian to run Crunch. Past that, we've got Iron Boulder. I'm gonna be honest, there was only one Boulder set super considered here because it did well and it's gonna stay. I'm not gonna pretend like I really considered any other set. Tara Rock, his rock resist is Iron Treads. He does not really have rock resist. We can build a team to beat up Iron Treads, which is exactly what we're gonna do, and Tara Rock just terrorizes this team. As far as the items go, there were a couple of different items. We could be Booster Speed. This allows us a one-time use in the in-game to potentially use it as a late-game cleaner. It could be Scarf. This allows us the potential to revenge the Zacian, the Scarf Latios, or the +1 Trailblazed Ogerpon Wellspring, or Bandit. We just switch Bandit in and we do 3-hit KO that Iron Treads even if he is max HP. If he's Fizz Def, it's a little bit tougher, but we make his switches a little bit more limited. So those were really the 3 options here with the Iron Boulder. A couple of other decent options for Terra type where Terra Dark was alright and Terra Fighting was also alright. Alright, past that, we've got the typical supporting cast. Grimmsnarl. Screens do very well here. He could be Psychic Fangs on his Zacian, which is his only real way to break the screens reliably, which he can be Psychic Fangs pretty easily to also be able to hit the Wheezing Galar. Grimmsnarl looks great here as a pivot. Like I said in last round, I haven't been bringing Parting Shot, so I don't expect him to over prep for Parting Shot, so Parting Shot is free. Spirit Break is also a free move here. Even Foul Play does very well here. Grimmsnarl honestly does do okay, and it also pretty much invalidates the Latios so long as it is alive. So Grimmsnarl has a lot of tools here, and also keeping the light screen up keeps the Darkrai at bay as well, because we don't take too much from the Sludge Bomb, and we kind of spread what clicks he has to do between Grimmsnarl and Gholdengo. So I really do like Grimmsnarl quite a bit here. Next up is the Bloopster, which honestly doesn't do that great here. Unfortunately, his whole thing is that he's a fast rapid spinner, but into this team, he is not a fast rapid spinner. The only real consideration that Bloopy would ever have here is that spikes do very well into our opponent. We just can't really spin block from the tread. So honestly, all things considered, Toadscroll does not do great here. We could bring him as an Iron Treads resist, but Iron Treads could just simply run Ice Spinner in this matchup. So unfortunately, the Bloopster is not looking too hot. Wheezing Galar was in real consideration here because of the fact that it does take a hit from the Zacian. If I were to bring a Wheezing Galar set, there were 2 sets that really made sense to me. We had Red Card and Rocky Helmet. Those 2 sets make the most possible sense. Red Card can send out the Ogerpon on maybe if it's Swords Dance up or whatever the case may be, or the Zacian if it's Swords Dance up or at +1, and we can get rid of those Pokemon pretty easily. Past that is very slow and it doesn't take the hits as well as you would like it to, but it does have some potential, okay, I'm about to lose, let's save the game with a Red Card usability here, or some Rocky Helmet. Hey, we know the Zacian's gonna click Wild Charge on our Ho-Oh, let's go into this Wheezing and let's get the Rocky Helmet chip that we might need for the in-game. Azelf honestly doesn't do horrific here. It could be brought as some sort of a rocker here. Taunt lead into the Dio looks fine, into the Iron Treads looks fine. If there's a matchup to bring Azelf, maybe it's this one, to be honest, but it wasn't seriously considered. And then Swampert does check that Iron Treads pretty handily. It can also take a hit or two from the Zacian if he does not have Trailblaze. Swampert can get up rocks reliably. He doesn't have very great ground resist except for the Ogerpon Wellspring, which granted is a fantastic Swampert resist, but in general Swampert does okay here. And then Grottle. Alright, moving on to Shuckle's team. Shuckle has Zacian. Zacian is pretty horrifying surface level, but honestly, once we dive deeper into the matchup and we see kind of that we force it into a certain direction, it's not as scary as you would think it is. It does still have potential to win in this in-game, do not get me wrong. There is always a Zacian dangerously looming, and there are a lot of different items he could be. The items that I saw in mocks were Scarf and Lum, and I think both of those make a lot of sense. I also talked about being very scared of Mirror Herb, because he can switch in on the Cure and Black pretty free, because it does have pretty alright bulk, and then he gets that +1/+1 on top of the +1 Intrepid Sword, and then we potentially lose the game. The cool thing about Zacian in this matchup though, while it is very versatile with what items it can bring, I do think that its moveset is pretty set in stone. He needs Wild Charge to hit Ho-Oh, Play Rough obviously for strong stab, Crunch to hit the Goldingo, as well as Psychic Fangs or Iron Head to hit the G-Weezing. I lean more Psychic Fangs because it potentially breaks screens. The only other two moves that you might consider on this set is Trailblaze to hit the Swampert, as well as get the +1 speed, and Swords Dance. But I really think that you need the first four moves I listed. If you drop anything, it's probably Crunch for Swords Dance. I don't really think you throw Trailblaze on. That would make sense because at +2, a Wild Charge does still do some decent damage to the Goldingo. Next up, we've got Iron Treads. Iron Treads is very annoying for this team to deal with. I've talked about it before, but it is his only rock resist on the team, so I do think some sort of a Fizz Def variant makes a lot of sense here, or he could be Assault Vested to take hits from the Goldingo. Booster Speed also makes a lot of sense. So Treads has a lot of usability here. It's going to be used as some sort of a defensive pivot. The question is it going to be the defensive pivot to Boulder and Cure and Black, or is it going to be the defensive pivot to Goldingo? It could also just do both by being Fizz Def with AV. That's definitely an option. It doesn't necessarily need offensive investment, but it does do very well into me offensively, so seeing offensive investment would not throw me off too hard. This Pokemon is very scary in this matchup. It does well. As much as I dislike Iron Treads, it does do pretty well into us. I think the moveset is Earthquake, Rapid Spin, Ice Spinner, and Heavy Slam. Maybe knock off on that set. Next up, Ogerpon Wellspring with Tera. So we don't have a water resist on our team, and we managed to keep fighting water types that do very well. And Ogerpon is hard for us to deal with. Our only switch-in that can pretend to be a switch-in on the entire team is Cure and Black, but Low Kick does 67% to a physically defensive Cure and Black. So we really do not have a switch-in. I think he's going to be Swords Dance, I think he's going to be Trailblaze, Ivy Cudgel, and Low Kick. I think that's the best set in this matchup. There are other options though. You could have no grass move, you could be SD Synth, you could be SD Sub, you could be a lot of different options here. Because even though Trailblaze is okay, I have shown a tendency to run Scarf or Booster Boulder, so I'm not necessarily sure you go with that route, especially with the fact that I have the potential Thunder Wave Grimmsnarl in the back. If we see spikes on this set, honestly, that's good news for us. I really don't anticipate spikes here. Offensive Ogerpon is just so hard for us to deal with in general. Next up is Latios, who I actually don't think makes an appearance here. Between Goldingo, Grimmsnarl, and having Iron Boulder to outspeed and pressure offensively, you really probably would want to go Scarf here. That way you have something to outpace the Cure and Black at +1, and you really don't want to be Scarf here, because we have things like the Ho-Oh, the Goldingo, the Grimmsnarl, and it's really hard for you to lock a move. So I do think that there are better slots than the Latios, and I do think if we see that Pokemon, we can deal with it accordingly with the 6 that we have. Although a Specs variant could definitely get out of hand if Grimmsnarl or Goldingo get weakened or put down. Next up is Darkrai. Darkrai is very tough for us to deal with. There are a couple of different sets. Scarf, again, same thing with Cure and Black to be able to outspeed at +1 makes a ton of sense. You need Dark Pulse, you need Sludge Bomb. Those are the only two moves that are a lock. Your last two slots could be Plot, could be Focus Blast, could be Hypnosis. I think those are the three that make the most sense. You could also throw on Sub if you wanted to sub in front of Goldingo, clicking Make It Rain potentially. I think Salac is also an option. I think Wagon brought Salac in a mock and it made a lot of sense. It was able to outspeed and be very scary because it outspeeds even Booster Boulder. It outspeeds everything on my team at +1. Deoxys Defense is another Pokemon that I do think is going to come. As for what set, it's really up in the air. I think Nightshade makes a lot of sense, but also Cure and Black sub doesn't get broken by Nightshade from Deoxys Defense. Rocks are very good into my team. Obviously, you could Spike Stack with this Pokemon. You could Screens with this Pokemon. Teleport is always an option. It's going to be really a defensive pivot on things like the Cure and Black, probably, that can get taken advantage of by things like Goldingo. So we just have to keep in mind how we offensively deal with that Deoxys. Pecharunt I think is the last Pokemon that's going to come, so I think it's going to be Zacian, Treads, Ogerpon, Darkrai, Deoxys, and Pecharunt. Pecharunt's dual stabs are just hard for us to deal with. It just is what it is. It's just difficult for us to switch into its dual stabs because our steel type is weak to Ghost. It's probably going to be Recover, Plot, Dual Stabs. That's definitely an option. It could also be Parting Shot, Recover, Dual Stabs. Another option for sure. Malignant Chain in itself is very difficult for us to play into and to pivot into in general. So we're going to have to figure out how we want to deal with this Pokemon. As far as the EV spread goes, there's so many different ways you could slice up Pecharunt in this matchup. As far as it being Fizz Def, Spud Def, Speedy Pecharunt, like there's a lot of different options for Pecharunt, and really it's going to be about gathering information on that Pokemon. Delphox, I don't really see coming. I really don't, because even with a Flame Charge, Iron Bolt is going to be able to outspeed. I have Screens to pressure it, Grimstar to pressure it. Ho-Oh doesn't really get broken by it. I'd be shocked if we saw the Delphox. Does it get Rock Move? No, it doesn't get Rock Move. So I really don't ever expect the Delphox, and I also don't expect the Quilladin. I think it's the 6 that I named: Zacian, Treads, Ogerpon, Darkrai, Dio, and Pecharunt, with the potential for Lottie, but not very likely. I know I really just kind of rambled on there, and a lot of the things, it didn't really seem like I put a ton of thought into. Again, the first build felt very good for this, and I didn't have to dive as deep for this matchup as I did for the one against Obo, so I don't have as much to say about our mons, about his mons, what they do and what they can do, without giving away exactly what our team is, so I apologize for that. But as far as the team that we're bringing, the first Pokemon is going to be Ho-Oh. As per usual, we're going to be a simple set: Recover, Whirlwind, Sacred Fire, and Brave Bird. We're max Fizz Def because once the Intrepid Sword goes away on Zacian, we're going to be able to take 2 of those wild charges and beat that in a one-on-one scenario, so long as he is not something like Swords Dance or we have Prior Chip on this Pokemon. Recover is to keep us healthy. Whirlwind is to blow away the Zacian. If we're at full HP, and this came up in every single mock, if we're at full HP, we already know he's not boosting item. We can Whirlwind him in his Zacian away, as it has the Intrepid Sword boost, and he doesn't get it for the rest of the game, which is very, very nice and very useful, because then we can pivot out of whatever he goes into. Past that, our dual stabs hits everything very, very well, and we can potentially burn something like the Ogerpon Wellspring that might want to switch into us. The Fizz Def also helps with something like the Treads if it comes to it, but essentially this is going to be here to check that Zacian. Next up, we've got Kyurem Black, and this set I believe is the only set to change from the initial build that I had. Originally, I had lead Power Herb Free Shock just to get as much damage off on something as possible, but the problem that I ran into with that was Deoxys Defense got led a lot of the time, and it could just recover off that damage very, very easily. And I was very scared to run Dragon Dance because of the potential of Mirror Herb on Zacian. So we did think of a potentially sub SD set, or sorry, sub DD set as well, but we're a Fizz Def Kyurem Black because we don't have a switch into Ogerpon Wellspring, and being that set would have taken away from that. So we are Fizz Def, we're Chople Berry because it allows us to take a +2 low kick after rocks into the Ogerpon Wellspring, or Tara Cudgel into a low kick. And we're a very weird set. We're like max Fizz Def, we've got minus speed, we're 0 special attack. What's going on here? So our speed allows us to outspeed a 12 or 16 speed Deoxys Defense. I can't exactly remember which one, and I didn't write it down, and be able to get some big damage off on that Pokemon. Big damage is not huge damage, but it allows us to pick off a weakened Deoxys Defense essentially. Our Fizz Def, like I said, allows us to take the Ogre hits very well. Our Spud Def allowed us to take 2, I believe, modest Dark Pulses from the Darkrai should it come to it. And then we went the rest into attack, and we went plus attack minus speed. And this is because we have both Freeze Dry and Earth Power, which looks a little goofy, but let me explain. If we go minus special attack, we have no rolls ever to 2-hit KO the Pecharunt in any universe, which I think is very crucial. So I didn't want to go minus special attack. We also went Freeze Dry over Freeze Shock or Icicle Spear, because Freeze Dry, if there's a situation where the Ogerpon Wellspring comes in and it doesn't decide to Terra, we actually don't do that much damage to it if we do not have Freeze Dry. With Freeze Dry, we're able to completely pack it up. We're able to make that Pokemon go away completely, so we can pretty much for free turn 1 click Freeze Dry, turn 2 click Fusion Bolt if there's ever a situation that arises where we still have our Chople intact and he's not at +2. And I like that a lot. We also were never clicking Icicle Spear. As spammable as it is, we were never clicking Icicle Spear, especially with the potential of only having 2 hit. Scale Shot, I like it more because it gives us that potential speed boost, and then Fusion Bolt is there to hit an Ogerpon that has already Terra'd. Kyurem Black, unfortunately, is not the most useful Pokemon in this matchup, like I've already talked about. It is here strictly to check that Ogerpon Wellspring, and once it's done that, it's done its job. Next up, we're going to Big Shoulder Day, Big Iron Boulder. We are going to end up being Choice Scarf. I really, really like the Choice Scarf potential of this Pokemon in the in-game. It gives us a blanket safety net versus the Ogerpon Wellspring if he ever gets a Trailblaze off, the Booster Energy Iron Shreds if it comes to that in the late game for whatever reason. a Scarf Latios, or a Zacian in general. We do so much damage with Terra, Rock, Mighty Cleave. It is absurd. We have Quick Attack just in case he's like the Salac Berry on the Darkrai, and we really don't need another move besides Mighty Cleave and Earthquake to hit both Pecharunt as well as the Iron Shreds, and then we're Psycho Cut in case he is some weird Air Balloon variant on the Pecharunt, and it comes down to a situation where we have to click Psycho Cut in the in-game. We were able to go Adamant with enough speed to outspeed the Ogerpon Wellspring, creeping our Toedscroll because he really does not need the max speed. He really even shouldn't be Jolly in this matchup, and if it comes to bite us, then so be it, I guess, if he does get that Trailblaze off. But we're max Adamant after that, and Mighty Cleave just does so much damage to everything. There's an in-game with this Pokemon, there's a mid-game with this Pokemon. I think this Boulder is going to put in the finest this week. And paired up with him, we've got another Scarfer. We got Mr. Feast, the Goldango. This was the combination that I really liked in Mox and really always came through in Mox. Both of these Pokemon being Scarf always put on a clinic and always put him in a really bad situation. Like I talked about in the overview of the team, Goldango, his stabs are not, there's no switch into these Pokemon. There's no switch into his dual stabs. Make It Rain plus Shadow Ball really forces what he wants to go into. We can go in on the Zacian. If he doesn't expect the Scarf, we can KO it. If he does expect the Scarf, he goes Treads, and we do like 30% with Make It Rain. And if we do 30% with Make It Rain, that puts the Iron Boulder in game a lot better. Or he can go into the Ogerpon, and we can play off that accordingly. We also have Focus Blast because it hits both the Darkrai and the Iron Treads. And with our Scarf, we're able to outspeed everything that we can. We're max special attack to rest in HP. I think there's a very real in-game where Shadow Ball, Make It Rain from Goldango, one of the two, an in-game is really opened up, or Iron Boulder with Mighty Cleave is really opened up. We just have to play them very, very well. Not very well. We have to play like we have a brain with these two Pokemon, and I think there will be an in-game for them. Next up, we've got Rinky Dinky. We're going to be Spadef. This is just to completely invalidate the Latios. If he does bring it for whatever reason, we want no part of it. This is also going to be our guaranteed lead. We can Parting Shot turn 1 on pretty much anything and put ourselves in an advantageous position. Dual Screens do very well here. It forces him to click Psychic Fangs on Zacian, which gives us a free turn to switch into Mr. Feast, which is awesome, and it allows us to get a free click on him. And we also have Spirit Break, because Spirit Break lowers special attack. It hits both the Darkrai and the Latios, which are the two things that we actually want to hit. And then lastly, we needed something for the Iron Tread, so we've got Tank the Swampert coming back. We're going to be Yan, Rocks, Flip Turn, and Earthquake. We're just simply going to be max Fizz Def to take on that Iron Treads and even potentially take a hit from that Zacian. Yan is going to be our click every time. Pretty much how the Mox win is Lead Grimmsnarl into Iron Treads. I Parting Shot as he rocks. He stays in usually. Or he goes hard into Ogerpon as I click Yan, and then I know that he's not going to let Ogerpon go to sleep because that Pokemon is invaluable in this matchup, so I click Rocks as he switches out one more time. And essentially, we get free Rocks and ensure that Ogerpon is not on the field whenever this Swampert is, which is essential. And that is going to be the team, ladies and gentlemen. I'm very, very confident about this team and what we can do to Shuckle. Like I said, we're going to lead Grimmsnarl. We're going to try to find an in-game avenue for both Boulder or Goldango. One of the two has a lot of potential to win this game late. Kieran Black is here to check the Ogerpon. Goldango is here to check the Zacian. Grimmsnarl is here to make Darkrai's clicks a little bit thin, as well as beat the Latios. And then Swampert's going to be here to bully the Iron Shreds. I'm really confident with this team. Like I said, all of the mocks felt very, very nice. He's going to have to bring some really crazy stuff for me to not feel confident about winning this game. I'm excited, man. Let's go ahead and jump in here with his game against Shuckle. Be sure to check that out tomorrow. Be sure to leave a like if you have not already. Thank you guys so much for watching. And for now, guys, this has been John Jr. signing off.